Okay, welcome back. In our last tutorial, we added a scene overlay to our game so that we had a score, and that score, when we got to 3, would quit the game. So what we're going to look at in this tutorial is we're going to make a menu, a game menu. So I'm going to need an image to put into my game menu. So at the moment, I have no image for, background image, not for the game. I'm aware we haven't put anything in there, but I haven't put anything in. I haven't prepared anything for an image for the background menu of my game. So I'm going to go to Blender Render, and very little will change, but this interface over here changes. So I'm going to show you that again. When I'm in Blender Game, I have all of the settings of the game, and Blender Render allows us basically to make cartoons and produce video files and still images. So I'm just going to press the render button, and it's going to render me a picture of what's here in the viewport. So press render, I zoom out, that's a picture, and that's what I'm going to use as the backdrop to my game, or to my menu. So I'm going to go save image as, I go to my desktop, I'm going to call this Pong menu BG, and it's going to save it as a PNG file. Now, I should have showed you this before I saved it, but this is a HD image, 1920 by 1080. So if you have a HD TV at home, that's the pixel resolution of it. It's on 1920 pixels right to left, and 1080 pixels top to bottom. And if you multiply those two numbers together, you get 2 million. So there's about 2 million pixels on the screen at any one time. Okay, so, and it should be set by default, it sits at 50%, so it'll make a smaller image. So it'll be set to 100%, and then press render. So I was going to nip out of Blender for a second and nip into Photoshop. I'm going to go File, Open. There's my Pong menu. I'm going to steal this part of my top wall. I'm going to go Layer, New, Layer via Copy. I'm going to move this down here. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller because it's going to look like, actually no, I'll just leave it like that. So I want to make it look like a face. I'm going to add in some text. Click in here, and I'm going to make my text kind of a pinky color to go in with the rest. And we're going to call this Biffy Pong. Any comments about the name will be laughed at. So I'm just going to pick a nice simple font. That's not big enough, so I'll make it say 200, and we'll put that there. Now, I also want to make a button, or buttons. In this example here, we'll just make one button, because once I've made one, then you'll be able to replicate it and make numerous buttons. So the button I'm going to make in Blender, but I need to just leave space for it. So there's plenty of space here. I can maybe put it in as a nose, and it'll all look very cute. So I'm going to go File, Save As, and I'm going to save this image as a JPEG, because they're nice and small. I'll put it on my desktop, Pong menu, background, perfect. And quality 8, it's got a 110k, nice and small, so perfect. So now let's run back over here. Now I haven't done any texturing or materials with you in Blender, so some of this will be new to you, and I know you've done some of it with Ross, so if I'm repeating Ross, that's absolutely fine. Just remember, I'm always right. So that's a joke if Ross is listening. Head up display level 1, so we've got 2 scenes, so I need a menu, and I'm going to make a new scene. So new, and I'm going to call it main menu. And in my main menu, like before when I made up the head-up display, I need to add a camera. I'm going to rename that camera MM, so for main menu, cam. Now, what do I want in front of this? Well, I want a mesh plane. If I look from the side, I realize I do not have my screencasting on, so I pressed 7 and 5 there, so I'm going to turn on screencasting and add on screencasting. There we go, so you can see what buttons I'm pressing. So I want to move this down, so I'm going to go to its location value here and give it, say, -3 on Z, so it's just here below the camera. Now I'm going to press 0, look through the camera, zoom out a bit, and then I'm just going to do this by eye. I'm going to go scale on X, so I just want it to be slightly bigger than the camera, scale on Y, and make it just slightly bigger than the camera on the Y axis. Now I need to change back now to Blender Game, and I have my plane selected, so let's find this plane. Where is it? So we haven't really looked at this window here, so let me just make this as big as I can. In the head-up display scene, these are all of the items. So these are my 2 scores, 0 and 0, and the head-up display camera. They're the only 3 items in it. This is level 1, all the items in level 1. This is my main menu and all of the items. So it's called plane 002. So I want to rename this. To rename things here, if you just double click on them. So I'm going to call this again MM, main menu, BG, background. And there it is there. Now, so what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to give it a material. So this is the materials tab here. I'm going to click new, and I'm going to call this MMPG because I'm original. How you name these things becomes very important later when you've got hundreds of objects and maybe hundreds of materials. Now, the color of this is irrelevant. And why is it irrelevant? Because we're going to replace it with an image, the image we made in Photoshop. This, however, is not irrelevant, how specular it is. So how shiny, if I want it to be really shiny or matte, and I want it to be matte. Now, this is the texture tab. So materials sets sort of the properties of the surface, and then if I want to add images, I need to add a texture. You must add the material first, and this texture is going to be associated with this material and only this material. That's how they work. You can't have a texture that's not attached to a material, except in very, very special circumstances when you're sculpting and you want to bring in funny brushes and stuff. But 99% of the time you've got a material, and attached to the material is a texture. So I'm going to go new. I'm going to call it MMPG. Now it doesn't clash to have, and this is interesting, I can have the object called MMPG because it's unique, no other object has called this. I can have the material called this because no other material has called it, and I can have the texture called it because no other texture has called it. As soon as I try and make another texture with this name, it'll go .001. But I can have an object, a material, and a texture all share the same name, and again that streamlines our workflow so that anytime we know what belongs to what. So it says, what type of texture have I made? An image or a movie? And then I'm going to go open. The JPEG is the one I want. There it is. Now, I can't see it. So let's go into textured mode. I still can't see it. Now, we're going to do one or two things we've not done before. So, under shading here, it says multi-texture. And then there's 2 options. And without getting too technical, when I turn on GLSL, it will basically enable my graphics card. And I've got a NVIDIA GTX 760 graphics card in this computer. which is a good graphics card. Probably about the equivalent of the ones in the college, which are NVIDIA Quattros. I can't see my image. The reason I can't see my image is if we look here, so let me close that up. If we look in our main menu, which is here, we've no lights. So I can add a light. So I can go add lamp point light, and it'll do that. It'll light everything up. I still can't see my image, so it's grey. And the reason I can't see it is because I haven't told Blender how to apply the image to the plane. Now, there's a few ways to do that. It says mapping. At the moment it's set to UV coordinates. Now, very shortly we'll do lots of UV work where we'll, map images onto faces and all sorts of surfaces. But there's lots of other options. I can have object, and you can see the object is now, or the image is now visible, or generated. There's a whole bunch of them. But for now, let's go object. So that's our menu. It's still a bit funny. The light's a bit odd. So I'm going to delete the light. Select on the plane and go back to its material. Now we can see that the material is present, but we can't see it here because we have no lights. So rather than mucking around with lights, because you'll always get in a menu system, you're always going to have a situation where if there's a light here, this corner will be slightly brighter than this one. And while it is possible to make an even flow of light, it's quite tricky. So a much easier way is to go down here to emission and have basically this plane emit its own light. So it doesn't need a light. And this way, when I use emission, everything is even. Now I'm going to press P to play the game, and that's what it looks like in the game engine. Now, so that's fine. So we've got our head-up display, our level 1, and our main menu. But in this main menu, we haven't made a button yet. So let's go make our button. I'm just going to change this to be our logic editor. So how do I make a button? The easiest way for me to do that is just to duplicate this thing. Okay, so I'm going to go Shift D, Enter, G, Z. So I've just duplicated that back plane, and now I'm going to go Scale, and that's going to be my button. Now, what I want to do over here is I'm going to nip back into Photoshop, and I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to type in the word play and make it nice and big. So 400. So play. And I'm going to turn off that. So I'm going to go File, Save As. So I'm not going to save over my other file. I'm going to go Pong menu play button. Okay, go out of this. Now in here, I could just add a new texture to it, but I'm going to make a completely new. I'm going to start again. So I want a new material. Now I want you to note that you don't press these. This adds a new layer, so I can have multiple materials on one object. Let's say I wanted something to be a cube, and I wanted one side of it to be red, and one side of it to be pink, and one side of it to be blue. You use these layers to do that. To make a new material, I actually have to click it down here. So add new material, and I'm going to call this main menu button. And now when I click over here, I don't want this either. And again, I can have multiple images. I don't want this one. I want to click a new one here. So add new texture. I'm going to go like for main menu button. And I do not want this picture anymore. I want the other one. So I'm going to close that. Go open. Bring my button image. And there it is. So that's now my game. But as you can see, they've got a couple of problems. One is I can't see the mouse. Two, it's not interactive. It's just a plane. So let's go make that interactive so that I can click on it. So now I'm going to select this here, and I want to do a couple of little things with it. And first of all, when you use a menu in something, so if you can see at the bottom of the screen here, my when I put the mouse over these icons for like Reaper or CCleaner, or this is the screen capture software I use, or Photoshop, they change color. So something happens when I put my mouse over the button to indicate the button is active. So just for, like, I'll show you how to change colors and stuff in the future, but just for now what we're going to do is something simple. We're going to do a small little animation. I'm going to make the button scale, get bigger or smaller, just a very small amount to indicate that the mouse has gone over the button. Now, how do I do that? Well, I need a timeline. So, didn't mean to do that. So I'm going to open this down here a little bit and change this to timeline. Now we're on frame 1, and it says end at 250, and this runs at, actually it doesn't say it here, actually you'd have to go back to the render engine. Runs at 25 frames a second. So 250 frames here is 10 seconds have passed. So as this green line goes doodle 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 all the way down here, that's 10 seconds. So let's see that. Let's press play. So you can count to 10, and that's how long it takes to go to the end. So on frame 1, I'm just going to go insert keyframe, rotation, rotation, and scale. And then I don't want a very long animation. So I'm just going to make it 10 frames. And I'm just going to make this a tiny bit bigger. So S, and made it a little bit bigger. Location, rotation, and scale. So that's it. Now, how do I get that to play in the game engine? Well, let's go have a look at some logic bricks. So the first thing I want to do is I want to add a sensor. And what sensor? I want a mouse sensor. And I want the mouse to be mouse over. So when the mouse is over this object, I want it to play that animation. The animations in the Blender game engine are not called animations, they're called actions. So I go action. Now what action do I want? Now, I didn't name the animation, which is a bit bold, but that's okay. So this is called MMBG, background.001, because I never renamed this object. I never called it button. Interestingly, if I call it button now, the animation name doesn't change. Okay, so that's the animation there. What are these things? What's the frame does it start at? Well, we started at frame 1 and we ended at frame 10. Now that's great, fantastic. Still got a problem. When I hit P in the game engine, I have no mouse. So how do I get the mouse to display in the game engine? And here in the render tab, so I've just scrolled down, it says mouse cursor. So now when I press P, I can see the mouse. When I put the mouse over, it plays the button animation. Happy days. So now we want to play it backwards when the mouse is off it. So let's see if we can do that. So this is, we'll call it mouse on, and this will be mouse on, and then we want mouse off. So we're going to go mouse over, and we're going to go action, start at frame 10, go to frame 1. This isn't terribly important, but so this works, that's great. If it doesn't, we won't worry about it. And then I want to negatize this, so I'm going to click this. This is if it's true, if it's false. So now I'm going to go P, mouse on, and that didn't work. Okay, so P, okay, that'll do. That'll do for now. So we know that the mouse is over it because it's going to pulse. I moved away. It wasn't the desired effect, but that's alright. I think I can, yeah. So let's get rid of the first one. We'll call this mouse play. So all we need is to know that it's active. I'll go through all of these controls with you again. These are like, you can set frequency and stuff here, so I could say go P, I can say only do it every 10 seconds, and you do it every 3 seconds, and like I said, you can invert, negatize it this way as well, so we won't worry about it for now. And now we have to give it a function, so that when I press this, when the mouse is over it, we change scene. So let's do that. So let's go to scene. There's going to be the action. It's going to be set scene and scene 1. So that's where we want to go. So play game. And how do we do this? So we've got mouse over here, and we want mouse again, and we want left button. So I'm going to add an add sensor here, and I'm going to do something that we haven't done before. And this is conceptually again really important that you get this. So the output, we know we want to play play the game, and we want when the mouse is over the button and when I left click, when both of them are true, do this. So that's how I do that. So when I go P and I left click, nothing happens. When I go mouse over, I don't change scene. But with mouse over and a left click, I'm now playing the game. Okay. So that is how you make a menu. So you make a new scene. You can put obviously aesthetically any background you want in, but how do you make a button? Well, you make an object. You need to have some way of discerning that it's active when the mouse is over, and then you have dual input, mouse over and left click is change scene. And now we can play our game.